Olukayode Ariwola has issued a stern warning to Nigerian judges involved in issuing conflicting court orders on the same subject matter, saying they will be made to face sanctions. The CJN described the actions of said judges as unpalatable, a cocktail of misleading and conflicting judgment, especially from those who rule in courts of coordinate jurisdiction. The CJN addressed the trend on Wednesday, shortly after he inaugurated 22 judges, where he said it continued to make a mockery of the judicial system. The most recent case in point is the Kano Emirates crisis, where conflicting court decisions from judges of the Federal High Court and the Kano State High Court favoring different parties in a dispute has put the people in a state of confusion. Joining us in the studio is a lawyer and public affairs analyst, Jide Ologun. Good to see you this morning.
Good morning.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
Right, let's get right into it. Given the recent controversial rulings in election petitions, and then just like I mentioned earlier, River State and the Game of Thrones we witnessed, or we are still witnessing in Kano State. What are your thoughts on this? The CJN stands against judges issuing misleading and conflicting orders. Do you think this will help restore confidence in the judiciary?
Hopefully. And it was Lord Heward that said that justice must not only be done, but clearly seen to have been done, and it's a strong guide in law. And I have said this, by the time justice system is bereft of accountability, then you find yourself on the platform of injustice. So his expressed concern is also the concern of many players in that sector of our national life. The Nigerian Bar Association also came out to express displeasure at what happened in Kano. And the CJN has read the Riot Act. It's sending stern warning to them. What we expect is that this should be followed up by action, because it said that erring judges will be brought to book. We have promised to bring so many persons to book in Nigeria, and I wonder where the book is, because you see, like they say, the judiciary, it should be a place where you approach for justice. And when we begin to have confusing deliverables like this, we should be worried. And like you mentioned, the waning confidence that citizens have in the judiciary must be restored. And it's also an assignment for the National Judicial Council. I recall that in Osun State, the case of one Justice Falola, who granted a garnish order after assuming jurisdiction that he didn't have his court, and was even alleged to have visited one of the councils in the matter in his chambers in Lagos. And the NJC carried out investigations and recommended that he should be, to the governor, that he should be released from his office, And these are issues. If we don't have accountability, we continue on abuse of office. And let me say this. If you look at Section 15, subsection 5 of the Nigerian Constitution, it says that the state shall abolish corrupt practices and abuse of office. So we have several laws in the land that can make us move on the path of righteousness and accountability. It's now up to the state to really implement this provision.
So I would say that, one of the provisions of the law that is probably causing this or is fueling this confusion is the ex parte order. We see during elections, the ex parte order is used as a tool to, stop anyone from assuming office. Walk us through the process of getting an ex parte order, and if it is accessible to, just the average man.
Ex parte order is clear and is expressive. Ex parte, that means the other party is not put on notice. And you go through that route when you have a very serious case that if that order is not given, it may affect the subject matter of the suit. So, and it's an interim order, not a permanent order. Let me use simple language. And what the court should do is look at the circumstances, use your discretion, and say, no, put the other party on notice. You know, let the other party also come and address us. But again, litigants have been very smart in going around and doing what we call favor shopping. And I would just want to suggest too that it's not only the judges that should be put under scrutiny here. Even the lawyers, it takes two to tango. And what you expect the judges to do, like I mentioned earlier, is to look at the merit of the case and ask yourself that, is it appropriate for me to grant this ex parte order at this point in time? And this matter came up some years ago, and the judiciary frowned at it and things like that. But it's not just about frowning at situations like this. You must take action to prevent it, because that's what we call reinforcement theory in industrial psychology. If you don't prevent it, it gets worse. So some people must pay for these actions that are unbecoming. And I also want to commend what happened during the elections tribunal season. Some courts actually slammed some lawyers, heavy fines for bringing frivolous matters. And frivolous matters are matters you just bring to waste the time of the courts and disturb the process. And we need to really upscale the confidence that people have in the judiciary. But like I mentioned, the National Judicial Council has disciplinary power. And what they do is to make recommendations to the appropriate authority, as in the case of the federal level, to the president, at the state level, to the governors. And I just mentioned the case of Osun State. So that's right. Whether it is now implemented or not is another thing. But the judiciary is not without disciplinary machinery. And the CJN has promised that they will put the machinery in place to ensure that erring judges are brought to book.
Talk to us how this has affected the justice system in the country, where, especially when we have governors flagrantly perpetuating disobedience of court orders, they choose whatever court order, whichever court order to obey. You see them, running to obey certain judgments or orders, and you see them, choosing, saying we are not respecting it. They will not even say anything. So talk to us about how this has affected the administration of justice in the country. Do you think that this would definitely help people to, respect court orders, or what have been the implications so far and the punitive measures for whoever is now disobeying the court orders?
Let me start at the macro level. It's all about the system we run. If we have fully respected the rule of law, which says nobody is above the law, as recently demonstrated in the United States of America, where a former president was brought to the justice mill and the mill went through, even though a pronouncement from the Supreme Court has changed the landscape in the USA right now, and Joe Biden is expressing his concern. It's a matter of creating that culture of respecting the rule of law. And in the case of governors, we should be mindful that the governors enjoy immunity. And the extent to which this immunity is exercised is another thing. Is it to the detriment of justice or to the service of the people? But I have also said it. Even though a governor enjoys immunity, he will step out of office one day.
That's right.
You recall the case of the former governor of Ekiti State, Ayodele Fayose. The FCC proceeded to carry out their investigations, did a warehousing of the evidence, the exhibits and everything. And as soon as he stepped out of office, he was even the one that went, and he's currently in court. But how long that will go on is another thing. So if this country is interested in justice, you implement justice. But I do not see us at the high scale of giving the rule of law its right or place in the country. In fact, during the last dispensation, when former President of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, was in office, he clearly stated, even before the Nigerian Bar Association that you will step down rule of law in considering national security. And the question is, what drives national security, if not respect for the rule of law? So we need to come to the point where people respect decisions from the court. But then, the court also must give clear decisions that are easy to interpret. Look at what is going on in Rivers State now.
That's right.
You see, so these are issues. There is a need for cleansing within the judiciary. And it's a great thing that the Chief Justice of Nigeria is recognizing that, not denying it, and expressing that necessity. You recall also that even in the Supreme Court, there were allegations of corruption against the immediate past CJN, who eventually was eased out of office. So I repeat that the judiciary is not without disciplinary mechanism. And of course, like we say in public relations, image is different from reputation. Image is the impression you want to create in the minds of people about yourself. Reputation is exactly who you are. And there's a Chinese maxim that you cannot carve a rotten wood.
That's right.
So if you want to be a great sculptor, you get a real wood that you can carve. So we are throwing in our concerns also that there is a need for internal cleansing, thorough one, not just like Aesop mentioned, after much is said and done, more is said than done. We need action. So thorough investigations must be done. The CJN invited the Chief Judge of the Federal High Court in Abuja and the Chief Judge of the High Court in Kano in respect of the two emirs that are involved in a tussle in Kano currently. So the justice system must be seen to stabilize the society, to bring confidence and to resolve conflicts.
That's right.
So I want to talk about what you mentioned about cleansing the system. I'm curious as to what part of the law, what provision of the law provides for a judge to also rule on a case that is already in court. You know, some will say that a judge will work with the evidences that he has in front of him. And of course, if he doesn't have prior information, probably on social media, I'm trying to relate it to what happened in Kano State. If he doesn't have the information, and that cannot also be passed on social media, what is the place of, you know, tracking these cases, you know, as a way of cleansing the system? Because if this judge decides and say he did not see, he didn't know this case was in court, and he decides to give a ruling, this is the bane of some of the conflicting court orders that we have.
It's part of the competency we talk about. You are expected to be versatile. And we mentioned that years ago when some political issues were going on and people were jumping around to get ex parte order. That even matters that are in the media space, you should be aware of it. But again, when some of the justices of the Supreme Court rose up against the former CJN, they complained that the facilities to even function effectively were not provided to them by the CJN. So you can imagine. But that does not in any way give you any excuse. You are a priest in the temple of justice. Justice should be clear.
The judge cannot rely on information on social media to make a judgment.
It's not a matter of relying on information on social media. You get that, okay, now, some of these cases involve personalities, public figures. You cannot claim not to know that this guy already went to Rivers State to get a judgment on this matter. You should be clear about these things. You are there to dispense justice. And again, let's come to the point of discretion. We have levels of court: magistrate, high court, court of appeal, Supreme Court. And the position is that when the judge speaks in court, what do we say? As your lordship pleases. It is his court. He is expected to dispense justice. Or he may choose to take a decision. So what we should focus on is to be proactive in ensuring that the decisions that are rolled out are clear enough, credible, That's the point we are making.
Well, if you look at, sorry to put in, if you look at the judges that we have, the justices, everyone in the judiciary, they are actually a product of the entire system. You know, it's just a microcosm of Nigeria, but then they are part of the Nigerian system where we have corruption, lack of transparency, illegality, etc. And people have been calling for holistic cleansing of the Nigerian system, all these system and institutions. Do you not feel that if we do not exactly clean Nigeria, you know, ensure that Nigeria becomes a better place in terms of institution, administrative justice, government delivering on their mandate, and people also holding them to account, we may not exactly be making a headway when it comes to resolving issues that we are facing in our courts, in the judicial system.
Excellent submission there, and I made reference to it. At the macro space, do we have a system that amplifies accountability? I mean, let me ask comparison. Will this happen in Singapore? Basically, I don't know, maybe later they may also come to where we are right now, where public officers are accountable to the citizens. It's all about rendering service and comparing